Sinister Secrets of Haunted Places, 7 Spine-Chilling Tales of the Cursed and Unexplained revealed. In the quiet suburb of Derry, shadows whisper secrets of a cursed past, lurid tales coiling around the infamous Jenkins farm. People vanish in its oppressive gloom, swallowed whole by the very walls that stand as crumbling testaments to what should never have been revived. Lila, a hard-working single mother, senses the unease every night when the wind howls outside her slightly worn-down home. As she juggles her 2 demanding jobs, a growing dread gnaws at her, fueled by the children's unsettling proclamations about what lies beyond the familiar white picket fences and rosebushes. Eerily, it starts with the sounds scratching at the wall, distant thuds, and always at night, fracturing her meager sleep. Lila tries to dismiss it, but Emma, her 8-year-old, begins to draw ominous figures in her sketchbook, shadowy beings with hollow eyes that suggest knowing far too much. It churns Lila's gut and tinges her dreams with darkness. Pushing through her fears, she forces herself to reason. It can't be real, right? But the whispers from the neighbors bring her back to the chilling reality, warnings cloaked in hushed tones, afraid to rouse the curse that clings to the Jenkins farm like a ghost. Graham, the man next door, once called it the heart of darkness, urging her to keep her kids away. Still, curiosity and the innocent thrill of adventure pull Emma and Jake toward the dilapidated estate, their wide eyes reflecting excitement under the fading sunlight. The moment they step on the cracked path leading to the farmhouse, dread envelopes Lila. The air thickens, holding memories of dread. Moom! Look at this! Jake's excitement cuts through her fear as he picks up a rusted toy from the ground. Peeking at the farmhouse, its broken windows resemble eyes watching their every move. Despite the nausea churning in her stomach, she steels her nerves. Later that night, the unease deepens, the wind moans mournfully outside, and the sounds from within her home return, scratching, whispering. Emma has an odd look, one of fear or perhaps recognition. In the dark, her daughter's whispers seep through, "They're coming, Mom." Each word digs deeper into Lila's heart, making it race with terror. What if the legends of the Jenkins farm were true? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The morning drifts in heavy with dread. Lila stirs, heart pounding, only to find her children missing. Panic wraps around her like a vice. Frantically searching the house, she finds Emma's last drawing on the kitchen table, a haunting sketch of the Jenkins farm and figures that loom over it, eyes dark and malicious. Adrenaline surges, but when she races to the police, her pleas are met with mockery. Kids probably just wandered off, ma'am. They turn up. Time spins wildly, her world dissolving into chaos as desperation claws at her insides. The neighbors, once friendly, are suddenly all suspects cloaked in fear she can barely register. Each moment thickens, laced with fear that she is unearthing something long buried. As she connects the dots, one truth gnaws at her: the safe haven she thought they had was a facade, and something vile lurked behind those friendly facades, welcoming her closer, deeper. Just as the veil separates her from uncovering the shocking truth, icy breath coats Lila's neck, and a chilling whisper echoes, "You're too late." Terror clenched Lila's throat as the darkness pressed against her. Heart racing, she spun around, desperate to find the source of the chilling whisper that seemed to seep from the walls of her home. The comforting familiarity of her living room twisted into a sinister realm. Shadows flickered and danced, a symphony of whispers that were too close, too intimate. "Mom?" Jake's voice broke through the haze. Relief washed over her, even as its shadow remained. She turned, clutching at her heart, and found him standing at the threshold of the room with wide, frightened eyes. Emma stood beside him, fingers tangled in her messy hair, her face pale. "Where were you guys?" Lila yelped, confusion mingling with motherly instinct. "I called for you. We were just playing." Emma's voice was small but tinged with a strange bounce of excitement that didn't sit right. They hadn't been playing. She could feel that in her bones, yet neither child seemed to notice anything was wrong. "Can we go to the farm again tomorrow?" Emma continued, her eyes glinting like shards of glass. No. You will stay away from that place. Lila's voice turned sharp as a knife edge, desperation seeping through her words. You have to promise. Jake stepped forward, concern etched across his brow. But we don't want to forget what's at the farm. I think it needs us, Mom. Panic clawed at Lila. Remembering the warning from Graham, shadows swimming in her mind, she pressed her eyes shut, trying to dull the piercing fear. You just don't understand. It's not safe. A sudden crash echoed from the back of the house, cutting her off mid-sentence. Instinct kicked in, and she surged forward toward the sound, her heart pounding in rhythm to the dread building with every footstep. As she reached the doorway, she scanned the living room, the air thick with a forgotten presence. A sound like scraping nails filled the silence, but it wasn't coming from the walls this time. It echoed from the hall. Stay close to me, Lila urged, trembling, gripping her children by the arms. The three of them moved as a shaky unit toward the source of the noise. Goosebumps rippled down Lila's spine as the scratching turned into soft, eerie giggles, childish yet twisted. Mom, what's that? Jake whispered, his voice trembling. It's nothing, Lila lied, panic tightening every word. They entered the dim hallway. As their eyes adjusted, the shadows gathered, shifting uneasily. Suddenly, Emma gasped, pointing to the foot of the stairs. There, in the deepening darkness, figures materialized. Silhouettes loomed just beyond the reach of their feeble light, the very beings Emma had drawn, eyes bright and hollow, emanating a sense of malicious knowing. The hair on Lila's arms stood on end. Who are they? She asked, breathless. They want to play, Emma said, her expression oddly serene. Play? What do you mean? Lila spat the words, pushing her children behind her, shielding them as dread wrapped its fingers around her throat. In a heartbeat, both kids giggled again, a chilling sound that sent icy pricks of fear coursing through her veins. Lila's eyes darted back to the figures, now drawing closer, the shadows shifting malevolently. Just then, the crashing sound returned, louder than before, splitting through the moment like lightning. Run! Lila yelled, her maternal instinct overpowering debilitating fear as she grabbed Jake and Emma, bolting back down the hallway, but the presence wasn't just in the corners of her house. It seemed to move, following, chasing them. The deeper they ran into the house, the closer the shadows crept, confident and relentless. They burst into the kitchen, but the door slammed shut with a force that rattled the windows. A voice echoed, low and distorted, reverberating through the silence. You shouldn't have come back. Staring at the door that wouldn't budge, Lila knew this wasn't just about her children anymore. It was about a long-buried secret unleashed, threatening everything they held dear. The looming presence was more than flesh, it was a history waiting to be reckoned with, an untold story. Ready to spill its secrets. As shadows curled and pulsed around them, Lila's breath caught. What final truth lurked beneath the curse of the Jenkins farm? And would they find a way out before it consumed them all? The whispers grew louder, and Lila could almost make out phrases. Join us, become one of us. In the suffocating darkness, she felt terror rise up, a truth pressing down. What had she awakened in her desperate search for her children? And for the first time, she feared that she might be too late. Lila's heart raced as the shadows pressed closer, the deepening darkness pulsating like a living entity around them. What do they want? She breathed, clutching her children tight. The air felt thick and impossibly cold, each second stretching out like an eternity. Mom, they said they want to play with us, Jake replied innocently, his eyes shining faintly. But Lila could only focus on the door, her pulse throbbing like a hammer pounding against an iron anvil. They want to hurt us. Shoo! Just listen, Emma said, the eerie calm in her voice sending chills deeper into Lila's bones. It was more than fear, it was a sense of something profoundly wrong, an unshakable intuition that her daughter was slipping farther into the darkness, lured by something sinister. The voice echoed more clearly now, every syllable dripping with malice. Come to us, join the game. Lila pressed her back against the counter, the shadows swirling and closing in like smoke. No. We want tea. She cast a desperate glance around for something, anything that could help them escape. There had to be another way out. She could feel it pulsing beneath the surface of her panic. Then, through the dim light filtering in from the window, she noticed a glint beneath the kitchen sink. Hope fluttered in her chest as she crouched down and revealed a small axe, its blade stained and rusty but still sharp enough to serve a purpose. "Jake, stay behind me." She stood, her grip tightening around the tool as she faced the encroaching figures. "I will protect you." "Mom, don't be scared." Emma's voice wavered, and it twisted the knife of dread more deeply into Lila's heart. "They just want to play." The silhouettes flickered at the edges of the kitchen, coaxing the children with tempting whispers, their hollow eyes gleaming in the darkness. With each passing moment, Lila felt her resolve tested. "I'm not afraid of you," she shouted, the challenge echoing against the claustrophobic walls. Suddenly, the door rattled violently as if something heavy had slammed against it from the outside. Lila's heart skipped a beat. Was escape even an option? The frantic knocking intensified, drowning the whispers around them. "Let us out! Let us out!" Jake cried, his voice high-pitched and shrill. "Breathe. Just breathe," Lila urged, though she struggled to calm herself. The door screamed under the force of unseen power, clashing against her frantic heartbeats. The figures lingered, waiting and watching. "Come play with us just one round," they chimed, their voices weaving an inviting yet horrific melody. "No. Enough." Lila swung the axe wildly, the blade slicing through the shadows but meeting nothing but air. A terrible laughter erupted, echoing in waves of pure malice, sending her heart into a frenzy. They were toying with her. "Do it, Mom. You can beat them." Jake's voice was a desperate plea, yet he too was gripped by the dark air of fear. In the growing chaos, Lila backed toward the window, her instincts screaming. "Help us!" she cried out, feeling the weight of despair dragging her down. Just as she felt the shadows grasping at her, she planted her feet and raised the axe once more, ready to fight against the tide. The faintest glimmer of light broke through the window, barely illuminating the kitchen for one fleeting second. It cast their distorted reflections back at them, a desperate family against curses that transcended time. But before she could act, the air around her shifted, chilling her to the bone, transforming the warmth of hope into an icy grip of hopeless dread. "You think you can escape?" The voice, now clear and resonant, burrowed deep within her bones. "You're already ours." In that moment, Lila understood. Running might have only compounded a terrible fate. The farm's shadows were hungry, waiting to drag them into an abyss of dark history. Would she sacrifice her edge to claw back at that history, or was she to fall into darkness like those before her? With a deafening crash, the door gave way and Lila felt the entire house tremble, like it was alive and thrumming with dark anticipation. "What if we can't get out?" she gasped, the truth crashing down on her like a wave, dragging her into a terrifying depth. Would her children be lost forever beneath the weight of the past, captured by spirits longing for play? Lila's blood ran cold as the truth set in. The game had only just begun. Outside, a figure loomed in the doorway, a silhouette framed against the dim light. And in that creeping terror, she wondered, had someone else returned to the farm, or was this a trap that tightened with every passing second? As shadows rushed forward, a new question emerged in her heart: what was left to lose? The door swung open with a groan that seemed to echo through the very walls of the house. Lila's heart plummeted as a tall shadow crossed the threshold, barely illuminated by the waning light outside. It loomed there, standing still, and the air felt charged with a dreadful weight. For a moment, time froze. The world outside faded, leaving only the menacing figure, obscured by the dark. "Who is there?" Lila shouted, her voice cracking. Jake pressed against her waist, while Emma's innocent curiosity shifted to fear, their breaths shallow as the shadows closed in like a noose around their throats. The figure stepped into the faint light, revealing a face that twisted everything familiar into a grotesque imitation. It wasn't a stranger but someone Lila had once loved, someone trapped within an icy visage of desperation and malice. "Lila," the specter rasped, the sound almost a whisper but sharp enough to slice through the fog of her memory. "Tom?" Her breath hitched, confusion and dread swirling into a tempest within her. This was her late husband, yet the man in front of her was a husk, his eyes clouded with darkness like a stormy sky. "What? How?" "Help me," he pleaded, but the way his mouth curled into a grin chilled her deeper than any shadow could. "They won. Let me go." Lila's gut twisted. The whispers grew louder, the chorus of voices calling from the shadows surged in response to this new element. Join us, become one of us, they sang, a mocking lullaby. Each note reverberated through the air, pulling at her sanity, teasing her children's innocence like a spider drawing its prey closer. Get back! Lila screamed, clutching the axe tightly, ready to swing at the twisted echo of her husband. But her hands trembled, she couldn't bring herself to strike. Part of her wanted to rush into his arms, comfort him. But she remembered, bright and clear, the day he was taken. The day she buried him under a sunken tree, far from any farm, haunted by greed and despair. Suddenly, the shape began to morph, shifting from Tom's familiar figure into a monstrous, amorphous form. It was as if darkness itself were spilling forth, consuming the room bit by bit. They are waiting for you, Lila, it hissed, tightening around her like a snake ready to squeeze the life out of its prey. Mom! Jake screamed, pulling at her shirt. Don't let it take you. With a surge of adrenaline, Lila swung the axe at the shadow, but it passed through as if made of mist. Laughter erupted around her, an agonizing cacophony that pulled at the edges of her mind. You can't fight what's already yours, the voice taunted. Shut up! She roared, her heart thrumming like a drum in her chest. You don't own us! The air shifted violently, the temperature plummeting as the shadows receded just enough to allow a glimmer of light from the window. It flickered like hope being crushed beneath the weight of despair. She could feel it, the house itself shuddered, like it held its breath in anticipation for the dark secrets yet to unfold. Mom! The window! Emma cried, pointing to the growing light. Lila barely had time to react before the shadows lunged forward, snatching at her ankles with dark tendrils. Heart racing, she grabbed her children and bolted toward the window, but the darkness roared, expanding to block their escape. Each step felt heavier, the whispers clawing at her resolve. You won't leave, you belong here forever. They reached the window, but Lila could see through the glass. An empty expanse lay outside, lifeless and haunted, as if the very ground conspired against their escape. What if it doesn't let us? She choked out, fear drowning her voice. We're strong, Jake yelled, squeezing his little fists. We can fight. But in that moment, hope fled like a candle snuffed out. The shadows surged, and Lila felt her courage draining away, pulling her into the void. With a final gasp of breath, she smashed the axe against the wood frame. Wood splintered, a desperate cry for freedom echoed into the night, mingling with the terror-stricken symphony of chilling laughter. And then, silence, caught between realms. Lila's mind raced. Was it even possible to break the curse? What would they have to sacrifice to escape? Would her children be lost as she confronted the depths of darkness, or could she find a light in the abyss? The window board cracked slightly, splintering wider, just enough for a hint of bracing cold air to slip inside what awaited them beyond. And beneath the laughter and whispers, another chill ran through the silence. Prepare for the game, it's your move now. A sudden gust rattled the window, forcing Lila to stagger back. The light grew, spilling across the room, but it flickered like a dying ember. She knew it was a trap. The shadows pulsed around them, swirling with a life of their own, hungry and chaotic. Mom! Emma whimpered, clutching Lila's leg. Jake stood resolute, fists balled tight, but fear danced behind his eyes. Lila could almost hear the beat of their hearts racing against the threat surrounding them. The darkness hissed, 1,000 voices blending into one, demanding their submission. You can't fight what you belong to. Don't listen. Lila shouted, shaking her head vigorously to dislodge the overwhelming dread. We have to get out. She felt the walls press in, the room straining under the weight of the malevolent presence. With a deep breath, Lila turned back to the window. The crack she made widened, but the glass held fast. Maybe it would escape with her desire to break free. On 3. We push. Jake nodded, determination flooding those innocent features. 1, 2. A guttural roar erupted from the shadows, echoing through the house, almost drowning out everything else. The tormented form of Tom, or what was left of him, morphed and twisted within the darkness. Lila! Stay! There's nowhere to go. You have to join me. No! Lila shouted, a primal instinct igniting in her chest. We're not yours. 3. They shouted together, and they hurled themselves against the window. The glass shattered like fragile dreams, shards flying everywhere, and for a moment they were set free, tumbling into the unknown out of the darkest corner of the house. But the shadows weren't finished. Tendrils lashed out, dragging at their heels, seeking to reclaim their lost souls. "Run!" Lila screamed, racing into the engulfing mist. The once solid ground felt like a treacherous sea, swallowing every step. Behind them, the shadows roared in fury, the spectral laughter growing louder, merging with desperate cries of trapped souls. Adrenaline coursed through Lila as she pushed forward, Jake and Emma stumbling behind her. The mist thickened, obscuring the world, wrapping around them like a lover's embrace turned sinister. With each step, dread knotted tighter in her stomach. "Where are we?" Jake shouted, his voice carried away by the swirling void. "I don't know." Lila gasped, uncertainty gnawing at her. "But we can't stop." With a frantic glance back, she saw the dark whirlwind rising behind them, writhing and twisting as it tried to understand their escape. Echoes of the past seeped into her thoughts: laughter, loss, and a promise not kept. It was all shifting into one intention: to drag them back home, the home that was now a nightmarish trap. "Over there!" Emma cried, pointing ahead. In the mist, there was a crooked outline, a stone wall visible for just a moment before the fog swallowed it again. Hope flared within Lila. "Maybe if we can get to the wall, we can climb." But the shadows lunged again, striking at their feet, a flurry of dark fingers, cold and grasping. Lila reached back, a wild swipe with her hand aiming to dispel the nightmare. "Stay close." She felt Emma grab her shirt, the urgency echoing between them like a tether. But a sudden scream rent the air from behind. "Jake!" Lila turned just in time to see her son being yanked back, his terrified eyes locking on hers. "No!" was all she could manage before another wave pressed against them, forcing her to choose. Lila's heart raced as desperation clawed at her throat. Could she let Jake go? Would it come for her, for Emma, if she saved him? "Jake!" she shouted, reaching out. "Hold on!" The shadows cackled, the thrill of their game igniting. It was their turn to push her in. And with every raspy breath, the taunt grew louder, seeping into her very bones. "You will surrender." In that carved-out moment of horror, Lila understood, there was no escape without a price, no way out without sacrifice, but how much was she willing to pay for her children? As the darkness surged closer, die-hard fear ran its final fingers through her thoughts. "This is not the end," she whispered, her resolve hardening. "I will find a way. We will find a way, but where?" And as the shadows began to close in again, a blinding light cut through the fog, illuminating a path, an alternative route that lay just beyond the billowing mist, seeming hopeful yet ominous. What awaited them down that path? Entranced, Lila looked at her children, uncertainty warring with both fear and hope. "Do we dare to try?" But before they could decide, a voice whispered from the depths, "Your choice will seal your fate." And then, the stone wall erupted, beams of light like blades slicing through, the shadows recoiling, but a deeper, darker threat loomed behind it all. Would they dare to take the chance? The light ahead beckoned, a siren's glow crawling over the cobblestones. Yet as they brushed against the illuminated path, the shadows shrieked, pulling the eerie fog tighter. It felt alive, vapor curling around Lila's ankles like a snake. Fear clawed at her instinct to flee. "Mom," Emma tugged at her shirt, her small voice trembling. "What's that light? Is it safe?" "Stay close to me," Lila urged, unwilling to let go of either child. She could feel her heart pounding against her rib cage, a war drum summoning courage. "We have to keep moving." They rushed toward the light, quickening their steps, the trembling mist chasing hungrily behind. Each step deeper into the glow made it harder to breathe, as though the air thickened with some unspeakable dread. The vibrant luminescence shifted subtly, like it was watching them, waiting for an offering. Suddenly, the ground dipped, and they stumbled, falling into a narrow alley framed by stone walls, jagged and wet with darkness. The light flickered ominously, dimming as if feeding off their fear. Shadows crawled along the edges, whispering promises of ruin. "Mom! It's getting darker." Jake gripped her arm tighter, his knuckles pale. "I know. Just keep your eyes on me," Lila said through clenched teeth. The hollow echoes of their feet against the pavement taunted them, mocking their frightened breaths. Around the next corner lay a massive wooden door, aged and cracked. It seemed as if the night carved it from the walls themselves. At the threshold hung a small sign, swinging slowly, its words indecipherable in the shadow. "Do not enter," just barely illuminated, repeated in a whisper through the air around them. "Should we?" Emma's voice quaked, heavy with uncertainty. But Lila felt a deep pull and inevitability that urged her onward. They didn't have a choice, not really. The shadows were closing in too fast, each breath tightening their throats, each second lasting a lifetime. Together, she whispered, her voice barely a wisp as she turned the doorknob. It creaked like tortured metal, swinging wide. Inside, the darkness loomed larger, an oppressive weight pressing down. The room beyond was vast and ancient, adorned with strange symbols and dimly flickering candles offering pitiful illumination. A chill crawled over her skin as she stepped inside, dragging the children with her. The door slammed shut behind them, locking them in. "Mom!" Emma cried, the panic in her voice cracking through the thick darkness. Lila soothed, even as her heart raced. "Let us explore." The room had an unnatural silence, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. A feeling of dread wrapped around Lila, sharp and unyielding. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting to form shapes that flickered briefly before sinking back, melding into the void. "Look!" Jake pointed to the far corner, where a large, dusty mirror stood, its frame ornate but eerily cracked. The glass shimmered, reflecting only darkness. "What's wrong with it?" Lila stepped closer, the children clinging to her sides. It absorbed the weak candlelight like a black hole. Her breath hitched, something about the glass felt wrong, inviting yet menacing. "Maybe it shows the future?" Jake suggested, his curiosity momentarily outweighing the terror. "Or the past," Lila murmured, her fingers brushing against the cold surface. A low hum vibrated through the room, and the mirror began to warp, shifting shape. Glimpses of figures swirled, faces contorted in eternal screams caught in some horrific loop. "No! Stop!" Lila recoiled, but it was too late. The shadows twisted like vines, creeping toward them. The air grew thick as ancient whispers filled her ears, tales of pain and sorrow that threatened to swallow them whole. "Mom! What is happening?" Emma whimpered, her voice dissolving into the terror surrounding them. "We have to destroy it," Lila shouted, her skin prickling with a raw urgency. But could they? Could they confront the embodiment of their fears? In that moment, she felt the chilling truth wrap around her heart. The only way out required confronting what terrified them most, the very shadows that sought to devour their essence. The mirror pulsed with a haunting rhythm, drawing Lila and her children closer, crafting a reality thick with despair and fear. They could either break through and escape or succumb to the echoes of those long gone. "Lila," the mirror shimmered again, a familiar face emerging from the glass. Tom's face, twisted with agony. "Help me." The weight of decision pressed down harder than the shadows, pushing her to snap. To act. What price would they pay to escape? In that instant, Lila knew there was only one way forward. But at what cost? "Hold tight!" she yelled, plunging forth, ready to confront the terror reflected in those haunting depths. Would they find their freedom at last or be lost to the darkness forever? As Lila surged towards the dark surface of the mirror, the room around her warped into chaos, shadows spiraling and stretching like grotesque figures reaching for her. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to flee from the harrowing sight of Tom's haunting visage, his eyes wild with despair. "Mom! Don't!" Emma's plea broke her focus, but Lila was beyond hearing. The promise of salvation clung to her like a lifeline, even if it dragged her deeper into madness. If she could just grasp Tom's hand, pull him into the world of the living, but instead, the cold glass pulsed, a heartbeat synchronized with her frantic one as her fingers finally made contact. A shockwave coursed through her, sending ripples of freezing air spiraling around the room. The whispers grew louder, each word curling around her mind, threatening to drown her in their darkness. "Help us, help!" Tom's voice echoed, peeling back the layers of her memory. She remembered the morning of the accident, the way the sunlight spilled into their kitchen, illuminating the laughter that had since turned to ash. "No!" She yanked her hand away, breaking the connection. The shadows recoiled, momentarily stilled, but a deep rumbling filled the air. The mirror throbbed, feeding off her turmoil. "What did you see?" Jake's wide eyes searched hers, panic on his young face. "I don't know," Lila lied, though the truth gnawed at her insides. "But we have to break it. We can't let it control us." With trembling hands, she searched the room for something to shatter the cursed reflection. Nearby lay a heavy candlestick, tarnished yet solid, waving shadows across the ornate patterns of the floor. Igniting her resolve, she reached for it, drawing strength from the children who watched her with upturned faces, their fear palpable. "Mom, please," Emma whimpered, falling against Jake, who held her protectively. "Don't." Lila didn't respond. Gripping the candlestick tighter, she took a step back, heart racing with urgency, then charged forward. A surge of adrenaline propelled her, the shadow swirling in rage as she swung the candlestick towards the mirror, the sound of metal striking glass echoing like thunder. The impact sent a shockwave through the room, splintering the surface of the mirror. For a heartbeat, everything stood still. A crack spread across the glass, intricately weaving patterns like spider webs spun in darkness. "Run!" Lila shouted, grabbing the kids as she darted back, the air thickening with dread. The mirror shuddered, horror and malevolence oozing from its depths. Frantic faces appeared behind the cracks, mouthing silent screams of terror. Lila clutched Emma and Jake tightly, feeling their tiny hearts race in sync with her own. The shadows converged, drawn to the broken mirror like moths to a flame, swirling with an insatiable hunger. Lila could almost hear their voices beckoning from the depths. Join us no." She was shaking now, fighting against the tide of darkness. "Not today." Then, as if the crack had ruptured a dam, a cascade of sound erupted. The mirror exploded into countless shards, each scattering like lost souls in the air. Lila turned, propelled forward by a primal urge, but the ground trembled beneath them, a fearsome moan echoing through the chamber. The walls closed in, shadows swallowing the remaining light, filling the room with an oppressive darkness that threatened to engulf them whole. "Mom, I can't see," Jake cried, his voice a spark in the obsidian. "Hold my hand, don't let go," Lila shouted, her own voice lost in the cacophony, her heart racing as she pulled them through the darkness. What lay ahead remained an uncertain fate. Would the shadows recede, or would they be claimed by a darkness greater than they had ever known? "Come on. We can't stop," Lila urged, fighting against the fear clutching at her throat. They raced through the veil of shadows, every step an act of defiance. As they neared a flickering glimmer of light ahead, the darkness parted just enough to reveal a figure distorted and shrouded in mist, a face that wasn't entirely human, stretching into a cruel smile. "Welcome back," it hissed, voice dripping with malevolence. The trio froze as realization washed over them. The battle might have only just begun. What horrifying truth awaited them on the other side? The creature's smile widened, revealing rows of jagged teeth that gleamed with a sickly luminescence. Its eyes glowed like dying embers, betraying a hunger that seemed to penetrate the very core of Lila's being. She fought the urge to look away, instinct screamed that every moment she lingered in its gaze, she teetered closer to the edge of some unfathomable abyss. "Mom, what do we do?" Emma's voice quivered, a high-note alarm that echoed in the shadows. Jake tightened his grip on her hand, his small body trembling beside her. "Stay close to me," Lila shouted, as if volume would shield them from the creature's dark allure. The figure stretched out a gnarled hand, menacing tendrils of smoke curling around its fingers. "There's no escape," it hissed, voice laced with shadows. "You've already invited us." And the ground shivered beneath their feet, and the walls seemed to pulse, as if they were breathing. Lila's heart raced, fueled by the knowledge that defeat loomed close. If the darkness had come this far, how could they possibly resist its pull? The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of longing and despair, and she could feel the shadows pressing against them, murmuring promises of power, of safety if only they would relinquish their fear. "No!" Lila shouted, forcing her voice to cut through the din. "I won't let you take them." With a desperate resolve, she pulled Emma and Jake forward, breaking the suffocating grip of the shadows surrounding them. The flickering light ahead beckoned like a lighthouse in a storm. They sprinted towards it, each step a frantic act of defiance against the growing darkness. The air was saturated with dread, each breath heavy with the weight of despair clinging to their skin. "Faster!" she urged, glancing back. The creature shifted, its form expanding, shadows dancing around it like venomous vipers ready to strike. "We have to get to the light." Just as they burst through the parting shadows, they stumbled into a vast, brightly lit chamber, though it was eerily silent. The light was sharp, almost alien, illuminating every corner with an unsettling clarity. The walls here were lined with mirrors, each reflecting images that twisted reality, fractured versions of themselves, laughing, crying, and distorted beyond recognition. "Where are we?" Emma whimpered, the brightness casting harsh shadows on her small face. Lila scanned the room, heart beating wildly. "I don't know, but we have to keep moving." Suddenly, one of the mirrors rippled, revealing the interior of a bathroom filled with steam that fogged the glass. She recognized the room. It was the one they stayed in during their last vacation, before everything fell apart. Her heart twisted, memories flashing, laughter, togetherness. And then, it morphed. She saw herself staring back with cold eyes, a void where her soul should have been. The reflection grinned menacingly, mouthing words she could not hear. "Mom!" Jake shouted, yanking her attention back. He pointed. "Look! That mirror, it's different." A mirror at the far end of the room shimmered like a portal, and for a fleeting moment, Lila thought she saw Tom's face reflected in it, clear as day. But behind him loomed the ominous figure of the creature, its eyes fixated on her with predatory hunger. Could that be a way out? Just as Lila considered running toward the mirror, the ground rumbled again. The air grew thick, and the overhead lights began flickering. She felt the shadows creeping closer, angry and relentless. "Lila, we need to go." Emma's voice broke her resolve, pulling her back to the moment. "I don't want to stay here." "Then let us go," Lila shouted. They rushed toward the shimmering mirror, uncertainty coursing through her veins. The creature's laughter echoed after them, a cold sound that churned in her stomach like a dark omen, but as they neared the glass, a deep growl reverberated through the chamber. "Join us," it echoed. There was no turning back now. Would stepping through the mirror be their salvation, or damnation? Whatever lay beyond, it waited for them with open arms. What terrifying choices awaited them? Just beyond the surface? They reached the mirror at last, the surface shimmering, almost alive. Lila felt the heat radiating off it, pulling her in like a siren's song. She glanced back, heart pounding, dread clawing at her chest. The creature was advancing, shadows flowing like a dark tide. "Mom!" Jake's voice was a shrill cry, laced with fear. She squeezed his hand tightly, reassuring him that they would make it. Somehow. "On three," Lila said, fighting to keep her voice steady. 1, 2, 3. They launched themselves into the mirror, the world around them warping as they plunged through the silvery surface. Cold electricity jolted through her body, piercing her skin like freezing needles. She felt Emma's grip slip for a moment, and every panic-stricken instinct surged through her. "Hold on!" Lila shouted, grasping Emma again just as they tumbled into darkness. The sensation of falling, then floating, filled their senses. They landed not with a thud, but softly, like feathers drifting to earth. Lila blinked her eyes, trying to adjust to the dim light. They stood in a desolate hallway, walls crumbling and dripping with dark slime. The air felt thick and rotten. Echoes of distant, muffled cries reverberated through the air. Lila's heart raced as she turned to Emma and Jake. Their wide eyes mirrored her fear. "What is this place?" Emma whispered. Instead of answering, Lila instinctively moved them forward. Something was wrong, so wrong. Each step felt weighted, as if the ground itself urged them to stop. She could hear faint whispers, words curling into her ears like tendrils, but they were unintelligible, unnerving. "Keep walking," Lila urged. "Stay together." Suddenly, a door creaked open to their right. It was slightly ajar, a darker void within. They halted. A chill ran down Lila's spine. "Maybe we should check." Jake hesitated, but his curiosity prompted him to take a step closer. "No. We should keep going." Lila pulled him back. The whispers grew louder, tinged with malicious laughter as shadows pooled beneath the door. Her instincts screamed at her to leave. Yet before she could take another step, an old woman appeared from within the room, her eyes wide and glassy. "Help me," the woman croaked, a predator-esque smile creeping across her cracked lips. "I'm stuck here just like you." Lila felt a surge of revulsion wash over her. The old woman started to reach out, fingers twisted and trembling. "You don't have to be afraid," she promised, her voice oily and sweet. "I can show you how to escape, Mom," she's lying. Emma cried, suddenly stepping backward. But the shadow seemed to pulse with life, reaching towards them, swirling around the old woman like a dark embrace. "Join us," the whispering echo turned menacing, resonating inside Lila's mind. A moment passed where everything hung in balance: fear, hope, betrayal. Lila turned sharply, looking for an exit. The hallway loomed ahead, its end still swallowed by darkness. "We have to go. Now." They sprinted past the beckoning door, footsteps echoing loudly against the damp stone, their breaths forming clouds of urgency. Lila felt a deep dread as a cold wind swept past them, swirling darkness clawing hungrily at their backs. "Just keep running," she ordered. But as they pressed on, Jake stumbled, the shadows erupting around him. "Mom!" he cried, but Lila grabbed him just in time. With the strain of their desperate flight, they pushed into the flickering light of an open room. Inside, shadows twisted into grotesque shapes, whispering, mocking. "No!" Lila shouted, stepping back, panic overwhelming her senses. In the far corner, another shimmering mirror reflected their image, its surface undulating as if alive: an escape or a trap? The choice pulsated around them, the darkness creeping closer, gnawing at their heels. "Do we take the chance?" Emma asked breathlessly, dread and hope mingling in her eyes. Before Lila could reply, the whispers roared, a chorus of despair as the darkness surged forward, ready to engulf them. They had only moments to decide. Would stepping through that mirror mean leaving behind the horrors of this place, or falling deeper into it? Together! Lila yelled, and with hearts racing, they charged forward. But as she reached for the mirror, one last chilling cry echoed in the air: "Join us!" What awaited them on the other side? Lila propelled herself forward, gripping Jake and Emma tightly, urging them onward. Each beat of her heart echoed like thunder in her ears, drowning out the dark whispers that swirled around them. There was no turning back now. They rushed towards the shimmering mirror, the surface pulsing with light that promised escape. In a flash, they slammed into it, breaking through the surface like a stone shattering water. Coldness enveloped them, and for a moment, everything spun in dizzying chaos. Then, silence. Lila blinked against the brightness that flooded the new space. They stood in the middle of an open field, sunlight spilling down like warm honey, washing away the vestiges of despair. The air was fresh, scented with grass and wildflowers. For a moment, she thought they had truly escaped. "Are we out?" Emma's voice was soft, disbelief coloring her words. The children were fine, trembling and wide-eyed, but alive. "Look! The farmhouse!" Jake pointed toward a distance where the Jenkins farm loomed, but it was bathed in sunlight, seemingly normal. Terror bubbled beneath Lila's skin. "No," she whispered, horror creeping in. They hadn't just escaped, they had entered something new, something that might lead them back to the darkness. Suddenly, shadows flickered at the edge of her vision, a dark haze creeping across the ground. "Run!" Lila screamed, pulling the children with her as they dashed towards the edge of the field. Shadows rised behind them, growing more chaotic, seeking to wrap around them just as they thought they were free. The landscape shifted, trees bending and twisting like ancient sentinels bearing witness to their flight. "Mom!" Jake cried out, struggling to keep pace. "What if it catches us?" "We won't let it." Lila gasped. "We will not be part of its game." Strength surged through her, driving her forward. As they neared the tree-line, Lila spotted a narrow path, a rugged track that wound deeper into the woods. It looked overgrown and unwelcoming, but something inside urged her on. "Quick! This way!" she yelled, pulling her children into the sudden obscurity. The trees loomed tall, their massive trunks sheltering them from the growing darkness that writhed around the outskirts. Branches scratched at them like ghosts of the past, evoking memories of the horrors they had unleashed back at the farmhouse. Not far behind, shadows churned and howled, enraged by their defiance. Lila could hear their hissing whispers, echoing with promises of hopelessness, scratching at the edges of her mind. You can't escape. But just as despair threatened to close in on her heart, low and deep in the woods, she heard laughter, a joyful sound that resonated above the rest. It didn't belong to the shadows but seemed alive and bright. "Mom, listen." Emma tugged on her shirt, eyes sparkling with hope. There, just ahead where the trees parted slightly, a faint glimmer of gold shimmered. Lila's heart leaped. Together, they veered towards the light, footsteps hurried yet hopeful. The laughter grew louder, echoing through the rustling leaves. "That's it. Come on." They broke free from the underbrush and stepped into a clearing, where the sun blazed in full glory. Before them lay a beautiful, vibrant garden, its colorful blooms waving. The air was filled with a sweet fragrance, and a gentle warmth enveloped them like an embrace, and standing amidst it all was a figure, a woman, vibrant and radiant, with a smile that radiated pure goodness. "Welcome, dear ones," she called, arms outstretched in welcome. "Who are you?" Lila breathed, disbelief mingling with hope. "I am a guardian of this realm, here to help souls lost in darkness," the woman replied, her voice soothing. "You have been brave, facing shadows that wish to claim you. But by believing in love and loyalty, you found your way." They took cautious steps toward her, the warmth enveloping them, chasing away the remnants of fear like a nightmare dissipating at dawn. "What about the shadows?" Lila asked, turning briefly to see the tendrils of darkness hesitating at the edge of the garden. "They cannot cross here," the guardian said. "This is a sanctuary, where light triumphs over darkness. If you choose to stay, you shall never face those horrors again." Lila looked down at her children, their faces filled with awe as they gazed at the beauty surrounding them. "What do you say?" she whispered, heart racing. "Can we?" Jake asked, eyes wide with excitement. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Mom, it's beautiful. We can be safe." Lila felt tears prick her eyes, the warmth of joy battling the lingering fear. "Yes," she said softly, breathless. "We deserve to feel safe." And in that moment, she made a choice to embrace the light, to accept the sanctuary they had found together. The shadows stripped away, whispers fading into oblivion as they stepped forward, into a world bathed in hope and joy. As laughter filled the air, Lila clutched her children close, embracing a future unshackled from the horrors of the past. They were finally free. But remember, dear friends, while Lila and her children found their sanctuary, your own journey is not complete. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next riveting tale. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Join us again. Your support makes all the difference.